When we opened up the well, we had one gentleman, Richard, who lived out on the streets. He was living under a carport, sleeping on a blanket when we first knew of Richard. But it took a long time before we could get Richard into the well. We'd see him, we'd invite him, we'd tell him what we were doing, but Richard was not interested. And it took about a month and a half before Richard finally walked through the doors. And when he came in, he still didn't trust us. He didn't talk to us. He stayed to himself. And he stayed to himself for a year and a half. We made all kinds of efforts to offer support and services to him, but he just wasn't interested for whatever reason Richard had. But then one day, it was like a switch flipped. And all of a sudden, Richard began to want to do something that was outside of his norm. He went out into the back of our property at the well, where we've got some beautiful fruit trees in the Nathalie McNeely Grove, and he began to plant seeds. And he produced one of the most beautiful gardens that you've ever seen. And he tended to that garden, and he was proud of that garden, and he would pick produce from that garden, and he would share it with volunteers, he would share it with guests, he would share it with anyone that expressed any kind of interest in that garden. And it brought to Richard just a whole new look on life. Sparrow's Nest is always in need of food. You may have noticed that there are food drives all over the county, at the grocery stores and in churches and in businesses. There are people or there are boxes there that you can donate food to make a difference in the lives of those who are food challenged. But so much of the food that we get is not the healthiest of food. There's a lot of canned goods, there's a lot of packaged goods, and so it's not always the best. And so some of those in our area who have these gardens have come up with a unique way to move the mountain for those who might be food challenged in terms of the amount of food and the quality of food that they are able to eat on a daily basis.
I was born in the Midwest. I lived in the West for most of my life, mostly in Oregon, where I learned to garden from my mother. We had a good rainy climate there, so it was a perfect environment for us. I've been in the East since 1996 and on St. Simon since 2010. I retired 2 years ago and started gardening full-time. I have gardens in several places on the island right now. I have gardens at the community garden. I have a garden at home. I have another garden I've started with a friend of mine up on the north end of the island. But at the community garden is where the bulk of my produce is grown. And we have a great opportunity out there with a lease from the county to be able to use some land, get access to free water, and have a fully sunny spot to be able to grow produce in. I've faced many mountains in my life. My mountain this time around is growing too much produce. As a gardener, we love to grow things, and we also hate to see what we grow go to waste. And so in an effort to eliminate food waste, we sought out Sparrow's Nest to be able to donate food to them so that the people who didn't have the advantage of access to fresh produce would be able to take advantage of it. We met Nancy Crable over in the Sparrow's Nest parking lot and went door to door offering free collard greens to the residents over there. And some were quite surprised. I think they were all very delighted to have been given this opportunity to have some fresh produce. So on a weekly basis, I would meet with a bunch of the gardeners out at the community garden, and we would harvest, and I would deliver to Sparrow's Nest. Sometimes a couple of times a week, depending on what kind of, how abundant the harvest was that week. The clients are so excited. I think they recognize my car now, and they tend to come and want to help carry things in. We walk in with these big baskets full of food and fill up shopping carts full of fresh vegetables, and everybody oohs and ahs over it. They seem to be very excited about it, very happy for it. They have come to know you know, at least during the winter, that Tuesday was our delivery day, and people seem to be around a lot on Tuesdays. There's a lot of smiling faces, and we get a lot of positive feedback. We were really excited about the opportunity at the well. The well has a fantastic yard that had a garden already in it that needed a little bit of tending. And when we saw that we had an opportunity to garden at one of the FaithWorks facilities, we were really excited about that. The difference between working in my own garden and working in a garden that is designated to provide for people who are, in many cases, unable to provide for themselves, is incredibly rewarding. We feel like we're giving back to the community. We feel like we're a part of something that we have never had exposure to really in the past. And the feeling of gratitude that we have to be able to do this and to bring this, it's almost overwhelming sometimes. We are absolutely more aware of the need in the community, and in fact, most of us now, as we go on reconnaissance missions around Brunswick looking for available plots of land where we could potentially set up community gardens for, you know, in residential environments, those are conversations that we have every week. How can we bring this closer to the people who can use it? How can we teach people not only how to grow things in the ground and take advantage of the resources that they have with relatively little cost, but what do they do with it once they grow it? That's the other challenge is, you know, people have lost their connection with cooking, with fast food and other things being so readily available. So I think that there's an educational process that can take place there as well to be able to bring this full circle.